Hi guys, welcome back. I'm here to do a video where I give different books that I've read this year a random book award. I have 100% plucked this from Emily Fox's video. I really liked this aspect of giving different awards to books that I've read throughout the year, so I ended up using the same questions that Emily Fox chose for hers. So I will link her channel below. Definitely check her out. Okay, the first award is the best dressed, or in other words, best cover. This was so hard. These aren't even all the best covers. There was a lot of really beautiful covers, and the first one is The Ravens by Cass Morgan and Danielle Page. This is just really cool. I feel like the aesthetics perfectly match like my own personal style. The crows on the front just looks really cool. It's captivating. So I chose that one. But another one I decided I really needed to add to the pile was a book called California by Eden Lapuki. The cover art was really what drew me to the book in the first place, and the title, because I grew up in California and then I just really liked all of the trees, so that's really why I even plucked the book from the shelf. And then when I read the synopsis, I was like, well, this sounds really good. That made it to the list just because the whole reason I bought that book was literally driven by the cover art. But I guess in the scheme of things, it's not like the prettiest. Another one I thought that the cover art was absolutely gorgeous was Evocation by S.T. Gibson. Unfortunately, I didn't like this book at all, but the cover art is really pretty. All right, the next book award is the worst cover. For this, I chose an older book called In the Forest of the Night. This is a very small book. This book was written by a 13-year-old. I'm going to assume that it was also probably independently published, and it's quite old. This book has been around for, I guess, quite a long time. I don't remember when it was actually published. I might have to look that up. But this was by far probably the ugliest cover from all the books that I read, and it's just so weird. So our main character is a really big fan of tigers for some reason. This cover kind of alludes to the fact that maybe she could shift into a tiger, which is not the case. So it's also incredibly misleading, but other than that, I mean, the art is just not great. The next book award goes to the best translated work, and for me that is The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. And this book was so good. When we got to the twist or whatever, it was a very devastating story. Now, this didn't just win because of the fact that it's probably the only translated work that I read this year, but it is really good. It's really, really sad too. So it's a good book. All right, the next book award goes to a book they have mixed feelings about. For this one, I have Castle of the Cursed. In one aspect, I did really like this book. I didn't exactly dislike it, but it did get kind of weird, and it's really different. And I have a hard time giving it any higher than 3 stars because of my mixed feelings, even though I probably would give it more like 3.5 stars. Because, as I said, I do kind of value how unique the story was. When you find out the weird thing that's in the castle, you're like, what is going on here? It's so weird. I just think that there are some things, some books that introduce something that is just almost too weird. It's hard to really know how you feel about it, and that's kind of where I was at with this. But then at the same time, it's like, why am I so hard to please with these really out there weird concepts when I want new stuff also? And I'm like, well, that's not really fair. Okay, authors that I want to read more from. I have too many. We're going to start with Rachel Harrison. I really have been enjoying her books this year. I have read 3 of her books. I've read Cackle, Black Sheep, and Such Sharp Teeth. I have also attempted to read So Thirsty. You will probably see this one on my DNF shelf, but it's only temporary. I do think that I could still really like it. I just couldn't like the audiobook of this one. I want to read So Thirsty, The Return, Bad Dolls looks really good, and The Veil sounds really good. So I can't wait to read those. The next author I would like to read more from is Sarah Addison Allen. I have since read The Lost Lost Lake, Garden Spells, and The Girl Who Chased the Moon. And all of these have been consistent. They just bring me so much joy. They're magical realism. They're about families, and they're just so good. Other books that I own by her that I need to read are Other Birds, First Frost, which is actually the sequel to Garden Spells, and The Peach Keeper, and then there's also The Sugar Queen, which I feel like a lot of people have been introduced to this author through that one, but that one I haven't read and I don't own it. But at this point, she's an auto-buy author. I'll read anything she writes. And lastly is John Steinbeck. I read about 3 of his books recently too, and next year I actually have it on the docket per se to read his big works, East of Eden and Grapes of Wrath, so I'm very excited about that. Okay, the next question is the genre that you read most this year. I don't know. Review everything I read, review all the genres. So I had this really bad thing happen to me where I have been keeping a long database in Notion, and unfortunately, my database just got wiped. There's 6 books on the list, and I know that I have been putting all of my books on there. I don't know why that happened. It seemed just so spontaneous. I think there is a way that you can recover what happened, so I might have to go do that or check on Goodreads. If or when I figure that out, I will probably put it in here. The next award goes to Best Sequel, and that is going to be Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This book was so good. I think it is a very rare feat that a sequel book in a series is even better than the first one, and that is high praise. So it is the second book of the Arc of the Scythe series. I just feel that it took what was set up inside the first book and just really expanded on that. It opened up this dystopian world in such a way that was just completely unexpected, and it was so good. So yeah, that one definitely wins. Okay, the most unique premise. I actually have 3 for this. Castle of the Curse, which we already talked about. It has this very different thing that happens that's living in its castle. And then we have Cackle, which is like a witch story. But I just thought that it was really interesting how we did it. I don't know. It was good. And then we have A Psalm for the Wild Built. A Psalm for the Wild Built follows a monk who goes around making tea for people, and this tea helps them. Like, he sits down, has conversations with people, figures out what they need most in their life, and he makes a tea that helps them. And then they also live in this world where there are these robots, but the robots and the humans do not like commingle until one day he meets a robot. This robot is just so great. I just love their friendship. I love the relationship. I love that the robot helps him kind of find his place in the world. It is definitely a coming of age story. My kid is home. All right, the next book award goes to New Favorite Author. For me, this is going to be John Steinbeck, I think. All right, the next book award is Most Emotionally Invested. Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to photobomb you.
What do you want?
No, I was trying to photobomb you. So, like, it's like you'd be filming your video and you never saw that. So, like, when you're editing it, you never saw it. So, when you post it, it'd just be photobombing.
Can you go put your backpack away and your shoes away where it all goes?
I'll put it away. Okay.
The next book award is for a book that you're most emotionally invested in, and I'm gonna have to go with the Throne of Glass series because I just feel like it took up such a huge portion of the year, and I was very excited that I got to share it with people. We read along together. Also, all the different relationships that are made throughout the series are so good. There's definitely some other books that were incredibly sad, like Traveling Cat Chronicles. Discovery of Witches is starting to come up there, but I literally just finished that book, and I think we're not quite there yet. There's still 3 more books to go in the series, so we're just starting to get very invested in the characters now. And then we also have Of Mice and Men and The Boy in Striped Pajamas. Those were incredibly sad, but they're very short. So I feel like your emotional investment in comparison to like a couple of weeks versus emotional investment that took months to read, that's why Throne of Glass wins. Cried the most, the book with the saddest ending. The Boy in Striped Pajamas, and for obvious reasons, I can't tell you why, so you're just gonna have to go read those. The best short book, oh gosh, Of Mice and Men, but I almost want to say Foster as well, because I think Foster is technically shorter, and it's also just really good. That book has really stuck with me, but so has Of Mice and Men. Both of those books are really good. The best graphic novel, I've read I've read a few graphic novels, but by far Spy Family is the absolute best. The best twist. This is a toss-up between The Last Tale of the Flower Bride and The Doll Factory. The book with the best of friends or misfits, and Throne of Glass series has a really good setup. Lost Lake, in a way, is maybe even better just because it's so incredibly heartwarming that it can't be ignored. I might have to go with Lost Lake for this one. A book that took the longest to finish, this one goes to Kingdom of Ash. This book was nearly 1,000 pages. It felt long. I mean, you can have a 1,000-page book that just captures your attention like so much that you want it to be longer, but this one felt like 1,000 pages because there was a lot of points in it that really slowed down that made it feel long. A book that you thought that you would like but was the most disappointing. Again, I have two for this. I have a book called Caraval and Starling House. Both of these books were and it's really weird because both of these I didn't like for almost the exact same reason. The writing style was way too overflowery, colorful, and just didn't even make sense. So they're bad. And I read them around the same time too. The next one is a book that was the biggest surprise that you actually liked. For this one is Becoming Jinn. So I actually read Becoming Jinn to satisfy a Read It or Unhaul It. And I thought this was going to be one of the first ones that I was just like, no, DNF, not going to work for me. And I ended up reading it all. I binge read it like in 2 settings. I finished this book and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really unique premise, and to top it off, it was really well done, especially for a young adult fantasy mythology that follows a bunch of teenagers. I thought that one of the strongest things in it that it did was that the parents were actually a huge part of the storyline, which a lot of books kind of try to cut out the parents, which kind of makes no sense. Yeah, this one was a really big surprise. A book that was a guilty pleasure, or a book that's not good, but you could not put it down. Oh my god, I have the perfect one for this. This is a Kindle Unlimited book called Plie. It's part of a longer series, and it is kind of this dystopian world, and you're following this girl who is really kind of like a misfit, and she gets put into this school and she's studying music or dance. She's studying dance. Other people are like studying music, various arts. This is a really rough school. A lot of people don't think she's going to survive because she is Sigma, Omega, I can't remember the hierarchies, but she's like the lowest on the totem pole. There's only one of her. She has to like live in the attic space, which is terrible. And then people are like after her, trying to hurt her. So she ends up saving this alpha character. And so they kind of become bonded, and they kind of start on this bit of a romance because he's protecting her. And the first book was like candy because you have this really intense, dramatic, action-packed kind of love story. It's very angsty. There's a lot of high stakes. There's a lot of danger. There's, what do they call it? It's like an alpha story. It's an alpha love story romance, which I wasn't really sure what that was all about. What I also didn't realize is it's kind of a reverse harem, which I ended up having to look up later to find out what that means. And I'll be honest, it's not my cup of tea. So a reverse harem, a harem romance is where there's like a whole bunch of girls in love with one man. Well, a reverse harem, obviously, is a whole bunch of dudes in love with one woman. You don't really start getting into this like reverse harem sort of dynamic until towards the end. And I ate that book up. I really liked it. It had me gasping, it had me like giggling and stuff like that. And then I got into the second book and I was like, what the heck is this? So I quickly gave up on that and I was like, I'm just gonna appreciate the first book for what it did, and that's it. I don't need any more of this crazy town. So that was Plie. I will still always say that I liked this book, but it is a bit of a guilty pleasure because it definitely exposed me to two types of like subgenre romances that I'm not really into romance to begin with. And then these are just like very specific kind of, it's just different. The next award goes to favorite video or challenge. And I don't necessarily have very one specific video. My Read It or Unhaul It series videos, I really liked those, and some really good vlogs came out of those. In particular, the one where I read Lost Lake by Sarah Addison Allen. In that video, we also make rice balls, and I liked the thumbnail that I created for that video. I liked being able to go outside and read, and I loved that book. Like, it was just all around a good time. But I think in all, I really like the Read It or Unhaul It series because they're just so satisfying. You know, you're decluttering, you're maybe finding some surprise, you're reading from the books that you already have, and there's just a lot of good things that come out of them. So I do plan on doing those coming up through 2025 as well. Okay, the next one is best world building. Now, the first one I put on here was Throne of Glass. And I always say Throne of Glass, but when I think of Throne of Glass, I don't just mean book one. I mean like kind of the whole series. However, a runner-up, because I scripted this a while ago, I just finished A Discovery of Witches, and that one is a quick runner-up because the setting and the atmosphere that Deborah Harkness creates in that one, it's almost a little bit better just because like the tone and the atmosphere really matches with the setting. And then I know in particular in book 2 we're going out of the timeline, and that's pretty cool too. So it's kind of a toss-up between both, I guess. The book that is most likely to give an existential crisis, A Psalm for the Wild Built. I think in particular because I think that was one of the strongest parts which made this book a favorite of mine, is the conversations that the monk and the robot end up having, and the fact that the robot is like, why are you worried about this? There's nothing to be worried about. And like, it's been a while. I can't remember exactly what the conversations were, but they were so good. I really enjoyed that. All right, a book that is an exception to a trope that you cannot stand. In so many ways, it is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and that is in particular why this book has become a favorite of the year, because I really am not a big romance reader, contemporary romance, and I thought that I just felt that the whole book was kind of ironic, and I felt very called out, and I loved every second of it because our female character is a romance writer, and she is talking to her male counterpart who kind of doesn't think that romance is very valuable, and it's kind of like chick lit or whatever. He doesn't have a lot of respect for it, and she kind of subverts that perspective when he has to then write a romance. The book in and of itself, it's about changing your perspective of the romance genre in itself. So I really liked that aspect. Plus, there is a really big trope that I don't like where there is miscommunication between the two characters. Like, she's like, hey, why are you ghosting me? And he's so I just really love the way Emily Henry handled this miscommunication in these two characters, and I thought it was so well done. It was so satisfying, and it's so relatable because like in real life we are constantly having miscommunications with people, and it's how you go about fixing it or explaining yourself. But most importantly is that the reason behind the miscommunication wasn't just very lame and just for no reason at all, or just to have a conflict that's not explained or fully explored. So very, very good. Underrated books. I'm gonna say that A Psalm for the Wild Built, I feel is underrated. And I think, I don't know, it's like it's really short. I also feel that it took me 3 times to finally finish the book. And I think that's because I was trying to listen to the audiobook. One day I want to get a physical copy of this book because it has become like a favorite of mine. I remember seeing it around, but like not a lot of people like keep talking about it, I think. So I kind of feel like it's underrated. However, I also feel A House with Good Bones is probably underrated. I see people talking about T. Kingfisher books all the time, but they're always talking about like Thornhedge or the horror one with the rabbit. Everyone talks about that book, and I feel like that one is way overhyped. I couldn't get into that one at all. I've tried multiple times. I can't get into it. But A House with Good Bones is so good. I love it so much. So I think that one's underrated. Okay, a book that is overhyped. I have 2 for this. That is Caraval and Crave. Crave has like 7 books. How is that possible? Oh my god, Caraval even has 3. And I'm like, how do people like these books? They are so bad. And then the very last one is Best Standalone. I feel like this is equivalent to your favorite book, kind of. And I have a very hard time choosing Best Standalone. But I think I'm gonna have to go with Lost Lake, to be honest. It's not a part of a series, and it is so good. I loved Lost Lake. But it's really not like Last Hill of the Flower Bride, I think is also a standalone. It's incredible. I guess that's my answer, okay? Lost Lake. That was really good. Okay, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you liked this video. Looks like my kids are on their way home. One of my kids is already home, and my other one should be walking through the door any minute. So I'm going to end this video here. I hope that you liked this. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.